All right. Hi. Welcome to another episode of the Influential Nonprofit. I'm Marianne. I'm your host. As you know, I work with nonprofit leaders to grow their influence so they can raise more money without feeling rejected, ineffective, or pushy. Because who wants to feel those things? It can all flow to you really easily when you are more influential. And if you don't know, before I started my company, Courageous Communication, for I don't know, 16 years. I do know it's 16 years. I work for a company called 501 Creative, and we did all nonprofit branding and web design. And so I feel especially connected to Jane Pfeiffer, my guest today with Fieldtrip, because you are an agency that works with nonprofits.
Yeah, well, it's great to meet another creative communications
Um,
person working in the nonprofit world.
yes. Did everybody tell you it was a bad idea?
Oh, yes. I was holding hope maybe there was one or two, but
Yes.
it's been an exciting journey. We know when the agency started, we were really in retail advertising. So our clients believed in marketing and advertising, and it was an investment that just was never questioned. And so I often say I'm selling marketing, which is a four-letter word, to a lot of nonprofits. And so it's tough, but we love the work that we do and helping people help others.
And I think it's changing, right? The it's changing. Okay. I mean, I do feel like people are understanding the value of good communication. All right. So, but before we get into that, I always start with the same question. Tell me something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot.
Wow, what a great opening question. I would say I'm proud of what we, meaning the team that I work with every day and the clients that we're working with, what we've learned from each other, what we've given to each other, and how we've grown as an organization. The agency that I'm president of and lead, Fieldtrip, is not about me. It's about the team around it and the work that we get to do. And I'm very proud of that, that it's the members of the team have input and influence on where we're headed. And that's how we decided to head into nonprofits. It was a team decision.
That's awesome. Okay. So, today we're going to talk about why people give because in your creative agency, you also did some quantitative research and looked at why people give. And and we're going to talk about why people give and the attitudes of giving, and then how we can implement that into our marketing and messaging. And I'm very, very excited about this because there's not a lot of quantitative, I don't think, research or data that you can access.
Yeah, and one of the first things to understand with this research is, we're trying to give nonprofit leaders and communicators tools that make it easier to do their job, right? Nobody got into, starting a nonprofit because they were excited about the marketing opportunities. And there's a lot of people that they have to communicate with. There's not enough resources, there's not enough time, and so, how do we make what we are doing or can do more effective? So, one of the things that came back from this research is the importance of attitudes. I'm sure everybody's heard of, personas and understanding your, consumer, whether that's the community or your, clients, whatever that might be. And in this research that we conducted across the United States, we asked supporters. So these are people who opted in and said they have given of either time or money with enough frequency and recency. So in the last 12 months that they, identify as a supporter of nonprofits. And what we found is there are three key attitude segments within this supporter population. And yet, across those segments, the demographics don't really change. There's a little difference here and there, but that's not the defining belief. And when you peel back and turn away from demographics or characteristics like this is an annual donor or a legacy donor or a lapse donor, and really just think about attitudes, it makes things a lot easier. It helps you understand what they want to hear from you instead of just what you want to tell about yourself. And that helps us connect and engage with any and every audience when we're focusing on the why they should
Yeah.
care.
So what I'm hearing, like, so the demographics are sort of stagnant or consistent, but there's so much more. So you can look at this and think, oh, these people are all alike because they're demographics, but actually there's really different attitudes underneath that are the catalyst for the behavior.
Yeah, and as you know, demographics are typically the way we look at audiences, whether it's their area of town, whether they're married, young, seniors, and that's then how we kind of think through how we might target them. And this shows that really don't worry about those details. Let's focus on their mindset and how they view both, important social issues, how they view, the beneficiary, and then what's kind of their culture and approach around empathy. Those are the three filters, if you will, for these three groups.
All right, well, let's say the three filters again. One is,
Okay, so one is kind of their culture. How do they
okay,
think about giving and supporting nonprofits?
okay,
Second is, do they believe that the issues that we're facing today are solvable or at least able to be significantly improved? And then the third filter is, how do they view the beneficiaries or the recipients of the mission?
okay. Now, did these three attitudes come through just from the responses you got? You saw some consistency in those responses?
Yes. So we, conducted the research not knowing if there'd be 5, 6, whatever segments, or what would be the defining characteristics or filters. And then what came back from that data is these very three support groups, or supporter segments, and then, what identifies them.
Okay,
So
I have a couple questions that I can't,
great.
like, they're in my head. How many people was this and how did you find them?
So we interviewed or surveyed 400 people across the United States, and we used a research panel. So about 66% of those people, so this is outside of the 400, did not qualify as a supporter. So really only about a third of our total population identifies as a supporter of nonprofit. And of those, we talked to 400 of those people through the survey. And these are people who have just agreed to take surveys on numerous topics across the country.
Gotcha. All right. So why don't we just dig in a little bit to each one of these attitudes? What
Okay.
about it with the culture of giving? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So within the supporter segment, there's three attitude segments, and it's really a third, a third, and a third. The first group is what we call the empathetic supporters. Now, this is the gold mine for any nonprofit. Their motivation to give is really because they feel that they are personally responsible for making a difference in the world. Their family has always valued helping others. So not only did they kind of grow up in this culture of giving, they personify it and it's part of their identity. Now, when it comes to the empathetic supporters' belief in a solution, they believe that any issue, regardless of how complex it is, can be solved or greatly improved if enough people and enough dollars are focused on it. So they are optimistic in their views, but realize it's not going to happen without them and without many other people involved.
Okay.
And then another key characteristic of the empathetic supporter is that they have a very empathetic view towards the beneficiaries, the recipients. So they feel like everyone is deserving of help And any one of us at any time in our life could be in a position where we have a need and could turn to, a nonprofit for support. And that regardless of your age or the circumstances, everyone is deserving of help and support. And that's those are the three most unique characteristics that define the empathetic supporter.
Okay. All right. And before we go into the other two, you said they're pretty much a third and a third and a third. So you could be like empathetic and something. You pretty much are going to land in one of these buckets.
Yes, you will land in one of the three buckets.
Okay.
And the three buckets aren't really a linear journey. So I wouldn't tell nonprofit communicators to try and convert one bucket to another. It's where they live, and we can still influence them based on the beliefs that they have and the values that they have around giving, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yes, I'm really glad I asked that question and you stated that, because the people who know me know that one of the biggest things that I coach and train people on is that you can't make somebody care, and that's not your job. Your job is not to convince people the worthiness of your cause, which is what
Right.
we were taught to do. Your job is to connect with like-minded people. So I don't need you, Jane, to be different. You can be who you are, right? And if you connect with what I do or the mission that I represent, great. If not, that's okay too. Right. So you get to be you and decide for you. I don't need to like, oh, I have to get somebody to change who they are, because you can't. Right. You
Right.
like I just don't think you can. And not without a tremendous amount of work and effort. And B, it's that what that says is there's something about you that is wrong, or that needs to, like, right, there's, nobody's broken, nobody needs to be fixed. There's not, like, you get to be whole and perfect as you are. And if there's a connection, great. If not, that's fine. I call it the philanthropic heart. It's like we all own our own philanthropic heart, and it's born to us from our lived experiences, especially as children. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, and I bet you could probably like look at these personas and say, yes, I'm sure these things all, because you said like the something about, they this empathetic from their family, right? They learned this, they were taught
Hmm.
this from their family. So everything we are was created, that formative childhood years. And from there, but we can't change that. That's hardwired in somebody. And let's just
Right.
work with it instead of trying to make people different. Work with people who find you. There's plenty of people who will connect with what you're doing.
Yeah. Underscore in bold. Absolutely agree. Just to carry that a little farther, what I run into so often is so many people think that if they're aware, they'll automatically care. It's just because they don't know about us. And so people equate growing awareness with, growing donations. And that's just not a
If they
guarantee.
only knew who we were,
Right,
if
right.
they
We're the
like, or
best kept secret.
yeah, I
Yes.
just had somebody tell me that the other day. We're the best, if I just had the right words, if I just had the right words, I would, I could, I'm sure, unlock this person, or just
Hmm.
one more mailing, or one more coffee, or whatever. And I know, but I have a big thing about, we don't try to convince, pitch, or sell. All we do is connect with, you're like a beacon for, hey, if this is what you care about, like, check us out, see what we're doing, instead
Yeah.
of wanting to, like, and then because people get sad, they're like, nobody cares. But people do care. You're just trying to make people who don't care.
Yeah. And so can you imagine, instead of trying to find those magic words, we actually started the conversation and asked somebody to describe or think of like the last time they donated, and then ask about like their motivations and their reasons for that donation, because that might, identify, oh, they're in this bucket, this one, or this one. And now I know, a little bit more about them and how to kind of position my request. Is it based
Yes.
on empathy? Is it based on, recognition, or is it based on, other?
So, um, Okay, because again, yay, because one of the things that also I work with folks on is that listening. I don't have to pitch or sell. My job is to listen because I can't meet your needs until I know what they are. And it's the same model. If you're asking somebody like, why did you donate? How did that make you feel? What motivated you to do that? You're going to get the information you need to say, oh, that sounds like, something, so what I'm hearing you say is you're interested in ABC. Yeah, I really like, okay. I'd love to share with you a little bit about something we have that I think might meet your need or might stimulate that interest or whatever. Like, yeah, sure. So now there's a context for what I'm talking about. That's it's got, it's called an opening. So I'm looking for the opening of where what I have is going to meet a need that you have, which is what you're doing. You've got the data to show it. Okay, so I sort of went on a tangent. So let's come back. So because I know I don't
But
want
it was
anybody.
such a fun tangent.
I know, it really wasn't I just more context in there, and because we've never really met before. Okay, so I'm getting very excited to see how our thinking is starting to, aligns and is starting to
Yeah.
unfold in the conversation. So I want to start again. The empathetic supporter. That's the first one, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
And again, so they feel, they come from a culture of giving, they're optimistic in solutions, and they have a lot of empathy for the beneficiaries.
Okay.
The next group at 34%, this sounds like a conflict, but they're skeptical supporters. They are still supporters, even though they're skeptics about nonprofits and the beneficiaries. So here, their motivation is more about the recognition from friends and family or what it says about them. And, they feel guilty if they don't help. So, we can probably think of donors that might fit this characteristic. For example, it might be really important for them to go to that gala dinner. Now, I'm not saying that all attendees of the gala are skeptical supporters, but that's probably where you will find this group most often. They think that needing help from a nonprofit is usually the result of bad choices. And so they need help from us as communicators understanding the context of what happened to put that person in need. Because, as you know, it's rarely one bad decision put them in this position. It's a collection of triggers and events and trauma and many
And
things that,
systemic problems,
right,
right? Right. Mm-hmm.
exactly, beyond their control. And then when they view the beneficiaries, they see themselves as being very different. Um, they think that the beneficiaries kind of brought those situations on themselves, and there's really a limit to how much we can or should help someone in need.
Gotcha.
So again, just like the name sounds, this sounds very skeptical, but it's still, I mean, it's a third of the supporters, so we can't ignore it.
Right.
These are going to be more likely to give because of an honorarium or some opportunity to be seen, or just, hey, I'm fulfilling my obligation as a good person, and this is who's going to be the recipient at this time. So the empathy here is a lot different.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. And then what's the third one?
Okay, so the third group is the disconnected supporter. So the disconnected, their motivation feels that it's important to work towards making progress on even the most difficult issues, and that no matter what your background and experiences, everyone is capable of change. And so where they're, like the name says, disconnected, they're going to tend to be more passive until it becomes highly personal to them. When it comes about solution, they're okay with making continual progress. They're not quite as optimistic, thinking that yes, this can be solved. They just want to see continual progress is being made by that organization. And then when we look at their views on the beneficiaries, They do think that some people will never get out of bad circumstances, no matter how much help they receive. And that, each of us is responsible for our decisions. Some of the things that trigger this group are, seeing headlines in news coverage makes them aware of, the impact of the lack of affordable housing, or they watch a documentary, or someone in their life has now had a need. And so that opens their mind. Until they have that personal connection, they're less likely to engage. But again, they're still supporters and an important group to attend to.
So what makes them, how do you see them as disconnected?
So the disconnection is, rather than having kind of that leading with empathy or feeling that, hey, I get something from being a supporter, it's more, until it's relevant to me, I don't know that I can help. I don't know that I
Gotcha.
have a role and responsibility. So we either have to increase their level of understanding, through the way we tell stories or invite them, or we have to wait for them to have, some type of external exposure, like I said, the news or a film or something, or a personal event that now makes them curious to lean in. So they're
Okay.
they're ready to support, but until it's connected to their world,
They're
they're going to
not.
be less likely to.
Okay. So it's really interesting because I look at the empathetic one, like that's really an internal motivator, right? It's like what's going to feel good to me. Um and that optimism. And then, but the skeptical is more of like the external validation, right? Like, what are people going to think about me? Or I want people to think good things about me, or I don't want people to think bad things about me, that
Right.
I'm not generous
Right.
or kind. But this disconnected one is really fascinating to me because one of the things I talk about is being committed. Like there's you can be committed or compliant. And so let's say like my friend Rachel, who her name's Rachel D'Souza, she's like a brilliant consultant, and she does a lot of work in diversity and equity and community centric fundraising. She's incredible. Anyway, she's also my friend and my neighbor. And many years ago, she had a heart attack, and she had her first baby, and she had a heart attack. It was this huge deal.
Wow.
And she, then she recovered from that, obviously, became a spokesperson for Go Red for Women. Okay. For a few years, she was super into Go Red for Women. And now I'm into Go Red for Women because I
Hmm.
love Rachel, and I, watched the story unfold, and I've known her for, many years, and her company's called Gladiator Consulting. And so I've watched her grow. And so I was really into it. And then, we live our life in 7-year cycles. About 7 years later, she's like, I just kind of don't want to be the girl